quite possible that when you sat down to watch a parenting video today, you didn't think you were going to be encouraged to parent a little bit more like an ancient Greek philosopher. Yet here I am, encouraging all of you that perhaps we could all be more effective as parents if we were a little more Socratic, a little bit more like Socrates in the way that we tackle our job as parents. And what I mean by that is that it was actually Socrates who said that the only true wisdom is in knowing that you know nothing. And knowing that we know nothing is probably the attitude that we need to take when we first learn from our own kids that bullying has entered their life and has started to impact them in a particularly negative kind of way. We need to assume we know nothing, because otherwise we assume the wrong stuff. There are 4 key things that go wrong when we jump too quickly, when we leap into action before we get the full brief of information. And the first is that we make assumptions that are incorrect. We read between the lines, we see between the cracks, and often when we're only looking at those narrow features, we see the wrong stuff. Our vision gets distorted by the emotion, and what happens next is we start to project our own experience onto our kids. So we say, oh, this is just like when I was a kid, or I know how this feels for you. And the truth is we don't, because we don't yet understand the full brief of what it's like for our own kids. We just made it all about us at the very moment that we need to make it all about them. The third thing that we do is we tend to act emotionally, which means we move too quickly. We go down to the school and we make demands that are quite unreasonable or even potentially unhelpful. And the fourth thing that springs from that is rather unfortunate and also rather unhelpful, which is that we embarrass our kids. And what happens is they learn not to trust us with sensitive or emotional information, because all we're going to do is join in the emotional whirlwind, whereas they need us to slow it down. They need us to think rationally, they need us to think sensibly, and they need us to work in partnership with the school in order to get a better outcome. So what should we do instead? Socrates taught us that knowing isn't just about being told something. The best way to learn is to ask questions. So I want to suggest to you today 12 questions. 4 who questions, 4 how questions, and 4 what questions that can make a big difference. When it comes to who, ask who's doing it. So can we find out who is actually at the centre of this? And then I think the next question to ask is who else? We need to ask who's been affected. We need to find out if there are other students who are being affected by the behaviour that's being exhibited by one or by many. And we need to find out who they've spoken to previously about this, to find out whether there has been any potential for action to have been taken place, whether there has been any action taken place, and whether we're stepping in at the start or whether we're stepping in at the end of this conversation. The other thing we need to ask is those 4 how questions, which for me is about asking, first of all, how long? Then I think it's really important to ask our young people to elaborate. So we need to ask them how else? How else has this been happening? Because what we know about bullying is that it needs to be repetitive in order to be called bullying. So how else has this been showing up? Is it just happened once, or has it happened in multiple times in multiple domains of your life? And that goes to the notion of also asking how often. Asking our kids how often this has been going on. And then my 4th how would be to ask, how bad is it? How much impact is this having on you? We know that for it to be classified as bullying, that it needs to be defined as being harmful. So we need to actually know, is this something that's getting to you a little or a whole lot, before we go down to the school and seek to take collaborative action. The 3rd set of questions that I want to encourage you is 4 what questions. So I want you to ask them what's going on and to stop. Get comfortable with the silence. Let them think it through. Let them tell you the detail that perhaps they were not thinking of telling you. Let them sit in that silence and give them every moment to fill that void. The next thing I want you to ask is, how would you like us to act? And you'll notice that I'm saying in there, how would you like us to act? We're going to work on this together. We're going to go down to the school together. We're going to seek a solution together. I think asking our kids also what's the hardest part of this for them is really important, because then we know what needs the most urgent attention, and that gets us to the final what question, which is, what part of this should we tackle first? This gives the impression to our kids that we're not tackling an unslayable beast here, that we're going to compartmentalise this problem, we're going to get some success, and after we get some success with the part that is the hardest for you, we're going to make sure that we start to then get comprehensive by taking each brick at a time in this wall and moving it out of the way as an obstacle in their social and emotional growth. 12 questions. 4 what questions, 4 how questions, 4 who questions that I think can help you be a Socratic parent and help you work in partnership with the school with a full brief of information under your arms, which gives you the greatest likelihood of being an effective parent. Wouldn't we all like that?